By morning she had a plan. It wasn't a good plan, but it was the only one left. His name was Marcus Hale, 44 years old, self-made billionaire. His face appeared on magazine covers with headlines like "The Coldest Mind in Business" and "The Man Who Never Says Yes." He had built his fortune through a series of acquisitions that had left smaller companies grateful and larger ones terrified. He owned 3 hospitals in the capital, a pharmaceutical research company, and, specifically, critically, the private medical center that held the only specialist who could save Kofi's life. He was known for exactly one thing above all others: he did not do charity. Not because he was cruel, people said, but because he had grown up on the receiving end of charity that came with conditions and shame attached, and he had decided a long time ago that he would rather change systems than maintain them. Amara didn't know any of that. She only knew one thing: he had what her son needed, and she had nothing left to lose. She spent 3 days getting to the capital. She couldn't afford the direct bus fare, so she took a series of smaller routes, transferring 4 times, sitting on overnight coaches with Kofi sleeping across her lap and her bag wedged under her feet so no one could take it while she dozed. She ate nothing those 3 days. She gave Kofi everything: the sandwiches she had packed, the biscuits a woman on the second bus had pressed into her hands without being asked, the orange she had been saving. She arrived at dawn on the 4th day, standing outside Marcus Hale's corporate headquarters, looking up at a building of glass and steel that reflected the sky back at her as if to say, "This place is not for you." She walked up to the entrance. The security guard stopped her before she reached the door. "I need to see Marcus Hale," she said. The guard had heard that sentence before, many times. His expression didn't change. "That's not possible without an appointment. You'll need to contact the office." "I've been contacting the office," Amara said. Her voice was calm. Not cold. Calm. The kind of calm that sits on the other side of terror once you have passed all the way through it. "I've sent 11 emails and made 23 phone calls over the past 3 weeks. I have the reference numbers if you'd like them." The guard paused. He hadn't expected the reference numbers. "Ma'am, I understand, but—" "I'm not leaving," she said. "I have nowhere else to go. My son is sick, and the man in this building is the only person in the country who can help us. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for charity. I just need 5 minutes." She looked at him steadily. "I'll wait." And she sat down on the steps, with Kofi, in full view of the entrance. She waited all of that first day. Security came twice. She gave the same answer both times. She would wait. A woman from a nearby cafe brought them food at noon. She didn't say why, just set it down and walked away. By evening, Kofi was asleep against her shoulder. The city moved around them like they were a stone in a river, splitting, flowing past, rejoining on the other side. On the second morning, someone filmed them. A passerby. 30 seconds of footage. A woman and a small boy on the steps of one of the most expensive buildings in the city, wrapped in the same coat, the boy pale and thin, the woman straight-backed and absolutely still, looking at the door. The video was posted with a single caption: "She's been here since yesterday. Nobody will let her in." By noon, it had 400,000 views. By evening, Marcus Hale's PR director was standing in his office holding a tablet and saying words like reputational risk and trending and we need to respond. Marcus looked at the screen for a long time, not at the comments, not at the view count, at her, at the way she was sitting, not slumped, not performing grief, not looking at the cameras that had gathered, just sitting, straight, patient, like a person who has decided something and cannot be moved by anything short of an answer. He had seen that posture before, in a mirror, a long time ago, when he was 12 years old and his mother was sick, and he sat outside a government office for 2 days, waiting for someone to tell him whether there was help available or not. There hadn't been. He had learned from that. He had built from that. He had told himself the story 100 different ways. "Send them up," he said. His PR director stared at him. "I'm sorry?" The woman and the child. "Send them up, now." The meeting was supposed to be 15 minutes. It lasted 2 hours. Amara didn't cry. She didn't beg. She sat across from the most powerful man she had ever been in the same room with, and she laid out the facts. Kofi's diagnosis, the treatment, the cost, the timeline, the 11 emails, the 23 phone calls, the 4-day journey, the $43. in a voice so steady and so clear that his assistant, who had been in the room for thousands of meetings, later said she had never seen Marcus Hale sit that still. At some point during the meeting, Kofi, who had been sitting quietly beside his mother, looking at the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows with his enormous, curious eyes, turned to Marcus and said without any preamble at all, "Your building is very shiny. Do you ever get lonely up this high?" Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "Sometimes," he said. "My mom says lonely is just what quiet feels like when you're not used to it yet," Kofi said. Then he went back to looking at the city. Marcus looked at Amara. She looked back at him. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. He made a call, then another. Then he said, "Kofi starts treatment on Monday." Amara didn't move for a moment. Then she said very quietly, "How much?" "Nothing." "I can't accept—" "You're not accepting anything," Marcus said. "I'm correcting a gap in the system. There's a difference." He paused. "I looked at the numbers this morning. There are 112 children in this country who need this treatment and can't access it because of cost. That number ends this year. I'm restructuring the funding model for the center. All pediatric cases will be covered from a dedicated fund effective immediately." He looked at her steadily. "Your son was the reason I looked at the numbers. The least I can do is make sure he's the last child who has to sit on anyone's steps." The story broke publicly the following Tuesday. Dollars. In a voice so steady and so clear that his assistant, who had been in the room for thousands of meetings, later said she had never seen Marcus Hale sit that still. At some point during the meeting, Kofi, who had been sitting quietly beside his mother, looking at the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows with his enormous curious eyes, turned to Marcus and said without any preamble at all, "Your building is very shiny. Do you ever get lonely up this high?" Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "Sometimes," he said. "My mom says lonely is just what quiet feels like when you're not used to it yet," Kofi said. Then he went back to looking at the city. Marcus looked at Amara. She looked back at him. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. He made a call, then another. Then he said, "Kofi starts treatment on Monday." Amara didn't move for a moment. Then she said very quietly, "How much?" "Nothing. I can't accept—" "You're not accepting anything," Marcus said. "I'm correcting a gap in the system. There's a difference." He paused. "I looked at the numbers this morning. There are 112 children in this country who need this treatment and can't access it because of cost. That number ends this year. I'm restructuring the funding model for the center. All pediatric cases will be covered from a dedicated fund effective immediately." He looked at her steadily. "Your son was the reason I looked at the numbers. The least I can do is make sure he's the last child who has to sit on anyone's steps." The story broke publicly the following Tuesday, not through a press release, through Amara herself. She gave one interview to one journalist, and she told the whole story from beginning to end. She was not angry in the interview. She was not grateful in the way that powerful people sometimes expect gratitude to look. She was clear and honest and completely herself. The interview was shared 14 million times in 72 hours. Marcus Hale's office was flooded with responses, not all of them positive. Some people said it was a publicity stunt. Some said he should have done it years ago. Some said the whole system was broken, and one man's decision didn't change that. All of those things were true, and none of them were the whole truth, which is almost always the way with real things. But none of that was what Amara was thinking about. She was thinking about the Tuesday morning 3 weeks later when Kofi's doctor called her into his office with a smile she hadn't seen on a doctor's face in 8 months and told her that the treatment was working better than projected, that her son, her planet-naming, bottle-cap-collecting, hand-holding son, was going to be okay. She sat in that office for a very long time after the doctor left. She didn't call anyone. She didn't post anything. She just sat there in the quiet and let the relief move through her like water through dry ground, slowly, completely, reaching every part of her that had been holding its breath for so long. Then she went back to Kofi's room. He was awake, sitting up in bed, looking out the window. When she came in, he turned and looked at her face, the way children do, reading it completely, instantly, without needing to be told anything. He held out his hand. She took it. "I want to talk to you directly for a moment. You just sat with this story from beginning to end. You stayed. And I think you stayed because something in it recognized something in you. The particular kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting for someone you love in a world that keeps giving you walls. The way hope and terror can exist in the same chest at the same time. The way a child's hand in yours can feel like the only anchor in the world. Maybe you've been a Mara. Maybe you are a Mara right now. Maybe you know someone who is. Maybe you've just never stopped believing quietly that the world is capable of more than it usually shows you. And stories like this one are proof that you were right. Whatever brought you here, I see you, and I'm glad you stayed. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now. Not for the algorithm, but because it tells me to find more of these. Stories that happened, stories about real people who refuse to stop, stories that remind us what human beings are capable of when they are pushed all the way to the edge and choose, still, to keep going. Share this with someone who needs it tonight. And if you're not yet part of this community, subscribe, because this is what we do here. Every single time, we find the stories the world walked past. We bring them here. We make sure they are heard. Kofi is doing well. He still collects bottle caps. He has started naming the stars. We will see you in the next one. End.